Welcome everyone to our Deep Dive Wednesday evening with Guy Finley live. You're joining us here in Merlin, Oregon. Hello to our in-person audience, hello to our online audience, and glad you could make it. All right, so if you're not familiar with our Deep Dive Wednesdays, let me tell you a little bit about it. We're going to take this time to explore material that you, our audience, have sent in to us, to questions that you've submitted to Guy to look at more deeply. This includes insights, ideas, specific readings from any of Guy's books, videos, audio programs. It also includes any material from a favorite master that you want more insight into. So people have submitted some of those questions to us, and we thank you for that. And we invite all of you to please continue to do that. I think we're actually going to get through our whole list tonight if we get through what Guy intends to cover. So we need some more in the hopper, so go ahead and keep sending us those questions. And you can do that through the contact form on our website. Just go to guyfinley.org/contact, and you can send it to us that way. Let's see, we'll add all of the requested questions to be covered to the list and address them as time allows. And our next Deep Dive Wednesday we'll have two in July, the 3rd and 5th Wednesdays of July. So the next one will be July 17th. Mark your calendar for that. We're going to get started now, but just want to make a quick note for those of you who have sent in some submissions. We did edit them lightly just for the sake of brevity and clarity, but Guy read the entire questions as they were written, and what it was edited down to was nothing pertinent was taken out of it. So just want to make sure you know that. And I will just ask our audience here to please check your cell phones and make sure they're off. I'd appreciate that. And we'll go ahead and get started. I'm doing double duty, so let me show the key lesson for you guys out there so you can see it on GoToWebinar. All right, our topic for tonight is realize your relationship with the vine of divine life and be set free. And here's the key lesson. Anytime we feel a need to stand in the healing light of the divine and act to honor that wish, we are shown a truth that not only sets us on the path back home, but that serves to guide us the whole way. We have never been outside of the light of God. All right, Guy, I'll turn it over to you and just let me know when you want question 1.
What if that's true? What if the truth that sets you free is the discovery that you have never been outside of the light of God, and that upon the realization of that relationship, what do you have to do to free yourself? I don't know how much you're aware of how almost every waking moment of your life is filled with an aching connected to trying to figure out what you need to do to resolve whatever the latest problem was that you blame for your pain. That's what human beings do with their time. And then, accordingly, they spend the rest of their time manifesting what they thought to themselves was going to bring an end to the need of thinking about what they need to do, and around it goes. I am personally left with an increasingly difficult set of choices to make. Because when all is said and done, nothing speaks more deftly about this relationship in which, made in the image of God, you are already in that light and always have been. Nothing speaks more deftly about that divine relationship than silence. Because it's in silence that you see. You don't see when you're thinking. You see your thoughts or that which has stirred the mind to pursue what it does. And the sophistry of descriptions can be a problem. And yet we are required as men and women who indeed feel called to answer something that never had a voice, that never said your name, that never reached out to you in some strange, mysterious fashion, and yet was more definitive in the way it drew you to its life than you could possibly describe, this incredibly mysterious relationship with life. And this endless pursuit of trying to nail it down. The only thing you nail down are your own feet. So we're going to look at this in a number of different ways as we go through these questions and topics that were sent in for our deep dive Wednesday. But I just want to make that very clear to you that as paradoxical as it is, the journey ends and begins right where you are, as you are right now. And that's what just drives everybody up a wall. Because every question we ask about how do we approach the divine, which most of the questions tonight are concerning that. Every question we ask about how do we approach the divine creates the illusion of a distance between yourself and its light. And we do not understand this because of our low level, because of the way in which our little tiny mind measures everything. The light of the divine is in everything that has ever grown out of that vine of light. The light of the divine is in everything that has ever grown out of that vine. That means there's nothing that appears in physical form that is itself not a branch of that light, only in another time, in another way, in another order of energy, but nevertheless it is the same. Nothing isn't God. Nothing isn't God. But for us, there's stuff that's godly, and then there's the ungodly people that we live with. There's the ungodly pain in our bodies that we don't want. There's the ungodly demand of a future that we can't quite get straight, even though we've been trying to straighten it out for ourselves since the beginning of time. There's the ungodly nature of the violence in myself, which can't have anything to do with the divine because I hate it so much. Yeah. So there's a lot to understand, and I think we'll just get started with the first one, and we can start seeing what kind of trouble we can get into.
Oops, hang on. That's not what I wanted. Apologies, here we go. All right, question number 1 came to us from Rebecca. I feel the truth in Guy's Bible passage sharings and interpretations, and I resonate with what he has referred to as the Aramaic original language meaning of various words. I would like to find a Bible and Bible guide that uses language truer to the original Aramaic teachings and hopes those tools will provide a more meaningful understanding of how to use biblical content as a life guide. Does Guy have a recommended Bible guide and Bible version? I'm also curious what Guy's process/path was to gain such clear and useful biblical insights. With deep gratitude, Rebecca.
So what is Rebecca looking for here? Remember, we're working to understand the question, to see it from whatever angle occurs to us. You can't sit in your chair and be asleep. This makes the room useless. Might as well stay home. What is she asking? Obviously, she's asking for some kind of practical reference, but what's the second part? curious what Guy's process path was to gain such clear and useful biblical insights. What is she asking? She wants to see for herself. Patricia, Debbie?
She wants to know how you did it so she can do it too.
I think that what Deborah said is that she wants to know how I did it, just in case that would be a valuable path for her to take. We spent quite a bit of time talking about authority over the weekend. So I'm going to answer this in a couple different ways. But first and foremost, we're always looking for something to model ourselves after. It's built into the way this mind deals with its pain. Because its perception of pain is that the model it had prior to the moment must have broken down. And so we need more Elmers. That's glue. So she's not alone in this. I know that for the longest time, I myself, it wasn't that there wasn't nourishment or insight or, more importantly, encouragement connected to reading or studying with other individuals. I feel myself amongst those who are very blessed for however it is that my own destiny worked out, given the individuals that I was able to work with directly. But I can tell you that if you ever have the fortune of working with such an individual, their one task is to help you understand that you're not to model yourself after anything, and nor do you have a need to model yourself after anything, which means that the stronger the need is, the greater you should want to understand what in the name of God is driving me to want to be like anything at all that I already know. Do you understand? You can't try to be like something that you don't already know. There's a passage in Matthew where this young aspirant came up and said, "Good master, what good thing shall I do that I might have eternal life?" And Christ said something along the lines, first of all, he said, "Why do you call me good?" And what he was doing immediately was telling this young man, do not model yourself after who and what you think I am. But then he goes on and he says, if you would, then you need to enter into this life that you're thinking about. You have to fulfill the commandments. And then he said, the young man, but well, what are these things? I've pretty much kept them up my whole life. And Christ iterates of 5 or 6 of these commandments. And he said, but I've done that. I'm bringing you in now. Have you not tried to live up to the commandments as best you understand them? And by the way, this is the craziest thing. Did you need commandments? Don't kill people? Really? Don't steal? Yeah, but I want to. Don't covet, don't hate. Love your neighbor as yourself. These are things that are natural to a human being, but not natural to humanity and its consciousness now, or then, or he wouldn't have had to point it out. Christ said, well, look, if you really want to do this, go and sell everything that you have and give it to the poor, and if you do that, you'll have treasure in heaven. At which point, if you know the story, because it is your story, the young man went away very sad and sorrowful because he had a lot of possessions. And when he had gone, and this is a teaching. Don't think somebody was actually there with like a clay tablet and like a stick, papyrus, and enough ink to jot all this down. This is a teaching. Christ said, a rich man shall hardly enter into the kingdom of heaven. And I say to you, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter God's kingdom. And when his disciples heard this, how did his disciples respond when he heard this? It says they were exceedingly amazed. But you know what the word amazed is in the air? They were really upset. And this is on top of the fact that quite a few of them had already cast away some of the things. But you have to also keep in mind that if all you own is a shoe and an old tarp, it's not a lot to give all that up, is it? Although maybe it is. And they said to him, they didn't say this, but I said, oh my God, speaking literally, who can be saved? Because we're already alluding to the fact it doesn't look good for us, and we're right here with you. And he said to them, with men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. But leading into that exchange was this idea that if that young man were to sell everything as he was instructed, that he should come and follow Christ. Now, the word follow does not mean what you think it means. The word follow in the old language means come and be one with me. Come and be one with me. But our mind and the way in these things are interpreted is, well, if I do the things that you do, I will be like you. But doing the things that others do not produce a change in the consciousness that you're ostensibly trying to alter through a relationship with God as you understand him, her, it. Next point to this, because we're still talking about what she's asked. What did you do? When Christ said, go sell all and follow me, he was basically saying, go prepare yourself. Go prepare yourself. Go make yourself ready to enter into the kingdom that you say you want to be a part of, because as you are unprepared and cannot know anything about that kingdom that you say you want to possess. Because by the very nature that you want to possess it proves you don't understand anything about it or yourself. Follow me. Now, with that in mind, I have to go through a couple things here with you. Stay with me. Okay, remember I said I can talk till the cows come home, but it rings their bell, but not yours. That's a farm humor, Patricia. You had a cowbell? Good girl. No description of any principle is the same as the principle being described. Christ is outlining principles, isn't he? Is the description of the principle, sell all, prepare yourself, the same as the principle itself, is it? But I've imagined that there's a power connected to this principle, and I want this eternal life. And so for me, the idea and the feeling of eternal life is the same as the principle, and all I have to do is model myself after the principle that I believe is going to somehow or other allow me to possess this other life. Still following me, everybody, please? So here I've imagined the power of grace. And I want the power of grace. Please, we're talking about ourselves. This happened whenever it was. It actually happened, it's happening now. But what that young man and what you need to understand is that whatever the power or the grace is of that principle does not exist outside of whatever the relationship is that principle is a part of. In other words, I imagine grace is some standalone condition that if I fulfill the circumstances, then I'll have the power of that grace. And I'm saying to you that you can't think of anything as being powerful because nothing exists outside of its relationship with something. So that whatever we talk about, grace, power, love, all of these things exist as they do because they are in relationship with something else. This is what Christ was trying to allude to. So that power, beauty, harmony, whatever words you want to use, that quality that we want, that we imagine the kingdom of heaven is, it exists as a relationship in an exchange between whatever the conditions are manifesting themselves in that moment. So there is no beauty without sunlight, trees, and space, and all the other things that produce the beauty. So that beauty is an expression of a relationship through which its conditions, as temporary as they are producing an effect called grace, beauty, harmony. Did you follow that? So that means, if you're following me, that this idea of grace, union, harmony of heaven, that it is inseparable from participating in whatever the union is that reveals it in that moment. So that there is nothing outside of the moment in which these lives, these energies, these conditions meet, because when they meet, by their meeting, there is a union. In their union, there is a reconciliation. And in that reconciliation, there is a realization of the unity of the whole thing, but only if I'm a part of that relationship in that moment. Trying to make this clear. I know it's difficult. I used to watch these, I still do, there's these Bushmen, these little miracle human beings living somewhere like in the Serengeti, some plain. I forgot the name of them, but they they click. And I remember in one of the deals, the man who was sort of an anthropologist, but also a survival guy, he wanted to learn the tricks of these native people. And one of the things they taught him was that if you want to know where the beehive is, where the honey is, you listen for a bee. And you follow the bee. Now, you would think that's kind of like, duh, but to us, who would think if I'm out somewhere in the middle of nowhere and I hear zzz, that if I just follow zzz, I'm going to get to the honey? Yes or no? You follow the branch to the vine. You follow the branch to the vine. You don't imagine the vine. You look for it. You listen for it. And why would I look or listen for this branch that leads to, why would I follow a branch that leads to the vine? Because there's something in me that wants to know something about the honey, the sweetness, the kindness, the patience. Something that I didn't put in myself any more than you put in yourself, that which brings you here to listen to these talks, or lets you pick up a book, or want to know anything at all about the divine. Now, key to this commentary is the following, and it's going to be a theme that runs through everything we address tonight. You believe that the branch exists apart from the vine. That's the way you see things. There's me, the branch, and then there's the vine. And I just have to do something to connect myself to it. So in connecting myself to the vine, I'll have the divine in my life and I'll be free. The branch does not exist outside of the vine. What feeds the branch is what the branch needs in order to pursue and fulfill the purpose of the vine itself. Vine and branch are a singularity. They are not separate. But for us, the divine is separate. And you can say, well, not to me. And I say, please check yourself. You're looking for it. Are you not? Does the branch need to go looking for the vine? Does it? It is intimate with the vine. It comes out of the vine. The vine feeds it. And in feeding the branch fulfills the purpose of the vine. So she's asking, what was my path to gain this understanding? There is no path to gaining this understanding. There is the patience to see where it is that you have mistaken yourself as being outside of the light of God. See, it is a requirement of this present nature to have something that it's not. It is a requirement of this consciousness to have something that it is not, to want what it does not have. It is a requirement of a divided mind. And the proof of that is that it never sees anything that it either wants or doesn't want, so that it is always separate from everything that is in its awareness, believing that the awareness it has of the condition is the truth of the condition that it's aware of. But you are not the one aware of that separation that your mind sees. That separation belongs to a level of consciousness that has to keep itself apart from something so that it can have something to do with itself in order to pursue, whether it calls it the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of cash. It makes no difference to that consciousness. None. So if that which is true and noble and good and beautiful and loving and kind, if it is an expression of what takes place when there is a union between, listen, I'm going to go into this in depth on Sunday. I hope you're interested in it. Where does the vine end and the branch begin? Where? Does it have a place where one begins and the other ends? Even physics, science will tell you, no, they're made of the same stuff. It's just that one does one thing and the other does another, but they're the same stuff. They're different forms of the divine, each serving as they do the necessity of the whole of that need. This is not how we see things. Everything for us requires thought. Everything for us requires measuring how and what it's going to mean to me if this happens or that doesn't happen. If you don't change, here's what's going to happen to me. If I can change you, it'll be better. Everything about our life sees the branch separate from the vine. And in most instances, need I say, who do you think is the vine? We're created to participate in a relationship that is not just within us, but that we are within all of the time. I know that this doesn't reach some of you. But God willing, you're able to see, you've had a moment or two where out of the clear blue sky you realize, you know what? Nothing more is required in this moment than to simply be aware of whatever it is that I'm being given and shown about myself. And in what I'm given and shown about myself in that moment is everything that the branch needs as supplied by the vine, so the branch can flower and give rise to the relationship endlessly. We're endowed, Rebecca, with something that I don't know any other creature is endowed with. And that is that we're endowed with the will to choose what we give ourselves to in that relationship moment to moment. It never dawns on you, I know that it doesn't, it never dawns on you that what you are experiencing that you don't want, you gave yourself to. That's the last thing that occurs to you. But when it finally does occur to you, you'll begin to see what Christ was saying. Go and get prepared. Because what are you being prepared for? The death of yourself while you're in this body. That's what spiritual preparation is. There is no other thing that it prepares you for other than to see the fantasy, the illusion of a me who is in time going through what I have to go through in order to find what is timeless. You are in what is timeless. A fish doesn't know it's in the ocean. You don't know that you are in an awareness that is timeless, but that has something in you that looks everything passing through that time, life, and measuring it and then trying to decide from your conditioning, is this for me or against me? Let's go on, Kate.
All right, we're going to go to question number 2. This is from Jane. Jane asks, is there an intermediary? Who is it searching for answers? The lower nature aches, the higher nature soars. Who is it left on the ground of aspiration? Many thanks, Jane.
Read that again with a little energy, Kate.
This question is from Jane. Is there an intermediary? Who is it searching for answers? The lower nature aches, the higher nature soars. Who is it left on the ground of aspiration?
What's Jane asking? What's she asking? Barbara, anybody?
Which part of me is searching for the divine? Who am I? She's asking who am I? Am I this? Am I that?
Yeah, she's saying, which of these am I? Because there's part that soars, and then there's part that's sore. Yes? And how, which one am I? Because I seem sometimes to be like this, and then other times I'm right down in the dumps. Divine, from the divine to the dump and back again. Good title for a book that won't sell. So here we want to do something, and I'm asking you to see it with me. Note that she points out this distinction, that there is something that's lower and achy, and then there's something that's higher and flying. And she's saying, is there some intermediary? Because there has to be, because one minute I'm in the dumps, the next minute I'm loving the divine. So again, I ask you this question, as I just pointed out. What is the difference between what feeds the branch and the branch that it feeds if neither one exists without the other? There is no difference. But this nature needs difference. Doesn't it? Please, I'm not making this up. I'm asking you. Look, here's the vine, the divine vine. Here's the branch that comes out of the vine. They are not separate. Neither exists without the other in one way or another. So that everything that you see, from the most celestial, cosmic, to the smallest micro, all of it is an expression of a grand word that gives rise to the sentences, to the expression of itself. But me, I just want the vine. I don't want to know anything about this particular branch. This branch has no interest to me because the fruit's sour. Please understand, the divine doesn't grow sour fruit. If there's something sour, it's because in that moment there's something looking and comparing me, who I want to be, to the vine I've imagined I should be a part of. So that there's an endless contrast. I'm trying to say the following. It is one thing what we call the higher and the lower, it is one thing revealing itself through two seemingly different forms. One thing revealing itself through two seemingly different forms. Is that not what vine and branch are? One life revealing itself through what we look at as the source and that which comes out of it. Two seemingly different things that are actually a singularity, but that we see because of what? Because of the way this mind requires that there be a difference and a distance between what I see and what I want, so that I can be always either praising myself or blaming myself for my inability to be a constant. That's where you go so wrong if you only knew it. See, you shun your own suffering because A, you don't want it, and B, it must prove that you're not anything like you've imagined yourself to be. Who shuns shadows? Shadows. The maker of the darkness shuns its own expressions. So suffering, this conflict, is inherent in the perception that I imagine the solution to my low, dark, what does she call it? My lower nature aches. As if there's a lower nature that aches and a higher nature that soars, when the vine and the branch are not disconnected at all. They are a singularity. But I imagine that there's some time when I'm going to soar when I won't be sore anymore. Do you remember we talked about this? I proved to you, I showed you over the weekend that there's never a moment without resistance in it. There can't be, because that's what creation is. So is that which resists what acts on it separate from what acts on it? Or are they a singularity bringing about a new conception through their marriage? That's what they are. They were always united and always will be united as something that is timeless and divine, working on something that is in time, the branch, to bring out of that branch what is equally timeless, only in another form. Now, if you can put yourself in that mindset, you can recognize, if you're not, I trust you're already able to do this. If the vine is not separate from the branch not separate. This lower nature that we want to believe is separate from the divine nature. Don't you want to believe that? Because that way I'll escape myself someday. But you see, the illusion is that that's yourself. That's built into the resistance, is that I'm not what I resist. And you're not what you resist unless you resist it. And then you become a captive of this consciousness that creates what it doesn't want, so that then it can imagine what it needs to be, and then it won't have that problem anymore. Except for one problem that you all know too well, we've talked about it all the time, which is that never happens. It's just from moment to moment. So, if we can understand that the branch is never separate from the vine, see, I don't know what you can grasp. Even when the branch withers and dies and the vine remains, the vine and the branch are still connected, only in another order of time. They don't exist without each other, even though they may only manifest themselves in a certain period of time. But to see the whole, you can begin to understand, if you can at all, that here I am, and I don't want to be this low, achy nature. Hates myself, doesn't like my wife, my husband, wishes I were anywhere other than I am, particularly since I'm running out of time to get wherever it is that I imagine I'm going. I'm describing to you what hell is. Hell is the idea that I need more time to get to where I need to go so that I can finally be hooked up with the vine forever. And the very pursuit of that time is distance between the mind and its own opposite that's decided, here's what I have to do to become what I want to become. So that in this notion of low nature, high nature is what? Becoming, 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 becoming. Isn't it? And what was the young man told to prepare for? Come on, I'm trying to show you something. The end of becoming. Because it's already done. See, for me, that's unacceptable, that it's already done. I'm not done. I still have a lot of time to cook my own goose in a number of different ways. It can't be done. I have so much pain. I'm so disturbed. And I so hunger to have people see me this way and to be in a way that I see myself that's pleasing to myself. It can't be done. And for you, it's not. Because for you, it can't be done. Because I have to have a time when I finally transcend the bad fruit on this branch. Which, by the way, you grafted that branch onto the vine, I didn't. See, you have, if you follow the branch to the vine, and when I mean follow the branch to the vine, what did Christ say by follow me? What did it mean? Be one with. You do that, then you begin to see, well, you know what? This moment that I think is hell because I think it is. And me that's thinking that it's hell only comes up with what hell is by comparing it to the vine that I just haven't hooked up with yet. So it's all going on in a sleeping mind that doesn't know it's asleep, and so creates constantly this illusion of something that it has to seek. Does the branch seek the vine? That would be, you can see that's silly, right? Why doesn't the branch seek the vine? Because it's already there. And this is befuddling. This is Elmer fuddling to us. Because I don't see it. So, how did the prodigal son make it back home? When he finally saw that the whole idea of becoming was nonsense, so the end of becoming was the same as coming home. But I don't want to go through that crucifixion. I don't want to die. Well, I say I do because I want to go to heaven or whatever imagined world it is for you, nirvana. I don't want to, but if I follow the branch to the vine, if I see there already a singularity, then I can begin to see through the nonsense of being someone who's forever trying to change anything about my life that I don't like. Measuring. Do you know that everyone and everything that you judge is born out of a part of you that thinks it's the vine and is looking at a branch that's not quite the way it's supposed to be, given that your relationship with it is what it is? And I said this when I started, and there's no way in this world that I or anyone else can describe to you the end of becoming. All there is you seeing the futility of it, of the next model, of the next frame, of the next character, the next quality, the next relationship, the time when. Those are models, aren't they? So here I am, and one day I'm sitting here suffering, and I realize that what I'm suffering over, my sore nature, not the soaring one, and I can see that in this soreness, I have a lot of unhappiness And I have a lot of things that I can see are responsible for it, and if I could just get them to be the way they need to be, I wouldn't be sore anymore. Failing to see that the moment I'm in is the outcome of the last time I was in the same place. They're one and the same thing. They just keep repeating themselves, but there's no one dan la casa. There's no one home. Because if there was someone home, they would see that the branch and the vine are already connected, and there's nothing for them to do to be fruitful. Doesn't that blow your mind? Wait a minute, I need to be fruitful. Like you know what it is to be nuts, but you don't know anything about being fruitful, I can tell you that. I think I know what a fruitful life is. I saw my father, he had an almost fruitful life. I saw everyone around me, I look at the people, I see fruitful people everywhere. I see it, I thought I'd be a fruit. World's getting pretty close. Is there fruit outside of the moment in which what is divine meets what it is created for the purpose of revealing itself and expressing itself and showing the perfection inherent in the... Can there be any more greater fruit than that? Can there? This is why it's so hard, the idea of sell all and follow me. Because I can't sell yet what I have to invest in order to produce a fruitful life, which basically is my personality. Can't possibly give that up. I'm on my deathbed, but I'm still working on it. Let's go on.
All right, we're going to go to question number 3. This came in from Steve. Steve says, I'm curious. I've experienced what I believe is God's all-knowing nature and know that destiny can be changed by God's grace alone. Are you given insight into whether or not God knows we will make the changes by his grace to change our destiny? Does God see past, present, and future as clearly as we see the now in the now moment? If you feel these questions are not worth exploring or rationalizing, please just say so.
I will go into them for the sake of everyone, because let's help Steve for a moment. What is Steve asking here? I believe I know something about God's all-knowing nature and know that destiny can be changed by God's grace alone. Now, I'm doing that not to denigrate his question. He asked this sincerely. What is he asking? What is he asking? What's at the root of his question? Fear. That's perfectly it. That's at the root of this question. Because this part, are you given insight into whether or not God knows we will make the changes by his grace to change our destiny? In other words, do you know for sure that God has already arranged that I won't be deranged when I reach my deathbed? Isn't that the question? Please, do you know, do I have to do anything? Or is God in his all-knowingness and my all-knowingness of whatever it is that I think I know, is there some kind of collusion going on where I can kick back and then believe that the vine and the branch are one thing and it's already done? Right. Isn't that at the root of his question? And more, does God see past, present, and future as clearly as we see the now in the now moment? You don't see the now moment or you wouldn't have to ask the question. Because unbeknownst to you, in the real now, past, present, and future exist as a singularity, much as the vine and the branch are a singularity. It is done. It is finished. You and I are living out the play in our time and our part in it. And what you call your time that you need to change, because that's what time is for us, I call it doing hard time, is this endless need to somehow escape a prison that I believe if God would have mercy on me, I'd be lifted out of it. God has already had mercy on you. Your past and your future do not exist as you fear they do, without a fearful nature creating a sense of self by looking at it and comparing it to what it hopes would be celestial and divine in nature. But you have to see that. Because like everybody else, Steve, he has his questions, he's been working, he's an aspirant, he wants to know. But the best he can formulate the question is always from outside of the actuality of something and trying to figure out how to define the actuality so he knows what his relationship is and whether he has to worry about whether or not God's already arranged his salvation. See, you're not saved in time. You hope that there's a time when you'll be saved. Or if you don't like the words, you hope there's a time when you won't be sore. You hope there's a time when you won't be angry and anxious, where you won't lose your patience, where you won't be this greedy little thing that you hope that there will come a time when you won't be that way. And that's somewhere where? In time. And you fail to see that the very existence of a mind that creates a time that is apart from its experience of the moment can only create in time the opposite of what it hopes to not be. And if you understand anything that I've said, the opposite of what you don't want is what you have. Isn't it? Can you follow that? Look, what's the opposite of what I don't want? This is what I am. That's what I'm experiencing. I'm experiencing the opposite of what I don't want, but the me that has this believes that what it imagines, it's not. You are what you imagine, meaning that you experience what this consciousness imagines. And when it imagines it, the very nature that imagines it then doesn't want what it's imagined. So then it needs time to escape its own imagined life. When if you're present, you can see the whole thing as a singularity and recognize, you know what? Why in the name of God am I making something out of this moment? That's Sunday's talk. Why am I making anything out of this moment instead of letting the moment make me and show me what I already am? We'll go into that deeply on Sunday. But you see, there's no me in that model. And that's the problem, is there's no me if at the end of becoming. So I need to become in order to escape the me that's trying to figure out how not to be me. It'll rattle your brain if you ever see it. And the point being, this isn't intellectual. I'm describing to you it isn't philosophical. It's only philosophical as long as you sit on the outside and think about it. But the moment that you enter into the actual relationship with the present, with what is, the moment you enter into it, philosophy's gone. It's gone. It's replaced by seeing. And seeing isn't philosophy. Seeing isn't knowledge. It's not practical experience by which I can measure the efficacy of my actions. Isn't it amazing? I'm trying to move along, but isn't it amazing? You wouldn't be here, especially if you're still here. You wouldn't be here if you haven't had shocks that absolutely stopped your mind for a moment. If there weren't this sudden collapse of all that I have imagined myself in time becoming, and then whatever has come along smashes into that image-making machinery so that for a split second it grinds to a halt. If it weren't for moments like that, there would be no chance of transformation. But we have moments like that, and the first thing that happens when the shock runs into the self, that by the way is prepared for that moment, because that's when you sell everything. Can you make the leap with me? That's when I realized, you know what a fool I've been. Believing that somehow I can prepare to shine ensures that I'm dull. Do you ever prepare to shine? Do you? What prepares to shine? I understand if you've got work, but even that's questionable. What prepares to shine? That which doesn't want to be seen as dull. So fear prepares to shine. Does light need to prepare to shine? Does understanding? The whole idea of a God who saves you disappears as you stop imagining yourself as being apart from God's life. And that's what it is. And again, that's what's so hard for us to give up. I depend upon the things that I imagine, because the things that I imagine always require a little more work to perfect them. So my life is an endless struggle to perfect what I've imagined. And then when I get to the end of what I've imagined and it proves itself to be imagined, then I simply have to go back and hate whatever it is that took place and then reimagine another time to come when I'll be free. That's called purgatory. Time is seen as an illusion inseparable from what is imagined needed to make myself whole. Is the branch apart from the vine? If I'm made in the image of God, am I apart from that which made this image? See, you have all the words. You can understand some of these things, but it sure is another story when it comes down to getting onto the rubber meets the road, isn't it? Because here I am and and the last thing that ever occurs to me is, let's follow the branch to the vine. The branch in this moment is the revelation of something that's really, really unhappy right now. But if I follow the branch, if I follow the bee to the hive, I get the what? I get the spiritual nourishment. Let's take the last one, or at least number 4. I know it's not the last one.
Number 4? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, here's question 4. It comes from Sally. I recently read this quote attributed to Rumi. Life is a balance of holding on and letting go. The first thing that came to me when I read it is, holding on to what? What I understand about letting go is that it means to disengage from identification with what I have been holding on to. If we are working to let go, for what purpose would we hold on to anything more than what we have already accumulated? Is it possible to hold on to something without identifying in some way with it, without fear of its loss? And yet, it occurs to me that with each letting go, there is a new level or degree of understanding, which itself is limited to what that new understanding is, so that there is still a holding on with an eye to further letting go. Is it to levels and scale that Rumi speaks? Is it related to what you have given, which is that life is a never-ending process of exploration and discovery? Any clarification is much appreciated.
So which is it, holding on or letting go? Well, you understand the question, don't you? Who can help? What's Sally asking here? Anybody? Basically, I'm a little confused. Because I don't get how, if, in quotes, and I'm going to get to this in a moment, if Rumi said life is a balance of holding on and letting go, how can that be a balance? Doesn't make sense. They're seemingly totally different opposites, right? So my mind is trying to make sense out of, and this is such a problem, my mind is trying to make sense out of what some sleeping human being reduced something that Rumi had said. Rumi never said that. What he might have said, and what we're looking at here, is a certain kind of understanding. Let's all do this. Watch. We're all going to take a breath in and then a breath out. Breath in, breath out. When you reach the end of the breath in, there's a holding. But inseparable from the holding of the breath in is the letting go of the breath. They're a movement. You watch a tree. We've had a lot of wind. You watch a tree. You watch that tree. The wind will take it to what point? It'll take the tree to a maximum point of resistance where it holds that for a second, and then the natural balance of the tree lets go and it moves back to the other side. So there's this movement between the opposites that don't exist without each other. You watch the tides. The tide goes out. When does the tide stop going out? Can you tell me? There's a point where, it's just like that. There's no moment where anything's holding on. There's just, how do I say, the birth of one movement is completed in the moment of its death. The birth of one movement is completed in the moment of its death, and its death is the birth of the movement that follows. You able to understand that? Isn't that what breathing is? The tides, light and day, night and day. There's nothing. The only thing that holds on are nutty little squirrels and the acorn in their mouth. And even that it can't hold on to. How many times do you visit in any given day? And you all have different things. This could be a Discovery Wednesday. What do you know that you're holding on to? Now, if you want to know what you're holding on to, all you have to do is look at what you give your thoughts to mostly. Where's my attention most of the day? Now, the problem is that where my attention is most of the day is on what I don't want or what I do want, so I don't have to live with not wanting what my attention goes to. But if you examine yourself, you can see this is a phenomena. Something in me is holding on to what I don't want. Because if I wasn't holding on to it, what has to happen? It has to move. Life is self-settling. All of this play of the opposites that our mind sees as definitive opposites, soar and soaring, happy and sad, up and down. Our mind sees that because we need to be somewhere in between that movement as the one measuring it and then trying to figure out how to get something to stand still. Do you remember the story about the frog on Sunday? What a contradiction it was. He was angry and upset because the pond would fill and empty and fill and empty. And what did Solomon say? You want to fix the very thing that your life depends upon its movement. It fills, it holds, it empties, it holds. That's what life is. Follow the branch to the vine. See the whole thing. Because if you be present to the whole thing and see, and listen, when I say see, experience the movement. You're never in the movement. You're always the thing trying to move something. Yes or no? Endless movement. The pyramids have nothing on psychotic human beings. The birth of one movement is completed in the moment of its death, just as its death is the birth of the movement that follows. You could say that's the death of that breath, couldn't you, at the end of it? But is it the death of that breath, or is its release, is the body that lets go so that it can have circulation, which belongs to another order of movement? Is that not the definition of life itself? That which is not holding on and that which is not letting go, but that which are united together in a single movement to reveal the life that gives rise to them. You see it? This is your study. I know we're running out of time. This is your study. And it's not a model. It's not something that you memorize. It's not something that you try to do. How do you find the honey? How do you find a relationship with the divine? You're in it. Anything short of that understanding and any subsequent action ensures that you sit outside of the thing that you say you want. And one day you'll get it. I'm so hungry for the sense of myself, it's crazy. And one day you'll see, you know what, that is crazy. How can I be hungry for something that I gag on half of the time? I'll give you a moment to think about it. How can I be hungry for something that I gag on half the time? And the other half of the time, my partner's gagging. I don't know if this helped. Let's take a break. We'll come back and have our dialogue.
right, welcome back to our class here. We're going to start with a Q&A here in just a moment. That's the time when you can come up to the mic. Of course, you in the room, you know that. Please come up if you wish. Online, you can, if you're in GoToWebinar, just raise your hand, click or tap the hand icon. I'll unmute you when the time comes. Or you can send a question into the question box. Chat area of YouTube or Facebook. I already have a couple of questions, but yeah, we have about 20 minutes. So I just have one quick announcement, which is Guy mentioned, of course, we just had our wonderful Talks in the Pines weekend this past week, and we still have the replay package available. So if that's something, those replays are not available on our free replay channels per the usual. So if you want to get those replays, you would need to get the package. And you can go to guyfinley.org/package. Oh, I was going to show you a graphic while I did this, and I forgot. There it is. All right. Yeah, so you can go to guyfinley.org/package and still get that. And it has 5 talks in it, a couple bonus talks. It's 7 hours worth of material. So, all right. Just make sure you do that if you wish. And Guy says he wants to, he has a couple of comments, and so we'll start with that.
I just sent you what I want posted.
You want posted?
If we can.
Okay, hang on.
I have one comment that will kind of shore up a lot of what we talked about. It'll help Jane as well, and God willing, it'll help you to see what you don't see. It's always the question. That's the wisest question you could ask yourself in an unwanted moment. What is it that I don't see? Let me know when you're ready to rock and roll. I'll set it up while she's getting ready. It's going to go up on the board, and you'll see it at home. If you remember, Jane was asking about, who am I? Because there's this part, this lower nature, I call it the soar nature, and then there's the soaring nature. Here's what I want to say to Jane and everybody. It's very helpful if you'll see it. It's up on the board. You are not stuck in between these opposites of soar and soaring. You are stuck outside of them, trying to reconcile them by identifying with one or the other. You are not stuck in between these opposites. That's the illusion. You are stuck outside of them because this consciousness that creates the opposites believes somehow or other it's different than the opposites it's identified with. They're a singularity. You are trying to reconcile them by identifying with one or the other, and when you identify with the soar, then you want soaring. When you identify with soaring, you're terrified of soar, and they vacillate. And when you see they are a singularity, a single movement of a consciousness that is itself being moved by life, then you begin to understand, I get it now. I'm always trying to find a position to deal with this pain instead of assuming the true position, which is the witness to their singularity, to how they are connected. I just haven't seen that yet. That's where your hope, if you want to use that word, lies. That's what it means to follow Christ, to be one with the light that reveals to humankind the content of their consciousness. That's what I am, the light, said Christ. I am that which reveals to humanity the unseen content of their consciousness. That's what we want. And to follow Christ, in this instance, means I'm going to enter into that light and let what that light shows me about myself prepare me for giving myself up. Because that's the only way I'm ever going to give myself up, is when I see the futility of trying to save myself through an opposite that's imagined. I'm done. Not really. Yeah. Come on. Yeah.
All right. I do have a couple of questions, so I'll go ahead and read one that came in from Annette. Annette says, is faith without works dead? Do we draw closer to God by reading his word and trying to behave like Christ? And when we drop our story, which is an illusion, do we become more of our Buddha within and die to suffering? You see it there?
Yeah. Do you know why I never get tired of these questions? because they are themselves part of this moment. And this moment is part of the revelation of the divinity of life of God, of the goodness of this understanding. And so if I participate in the moment, which is to enter into the relationship, which would include my resistance, as you know, you always feel, I don't. First, is faith without works dead? Anything that is without works is dead. But, and Annette, I don't know if Annette was here for the weekend of talks, this was this weekend, yeah? Yeah. Follow that bee to the hive. More like the bar. The bar. I was just mimicking somebody that I had dinner with last night. Follow it to the barn. Massachusetts, New England. What did we say about authority? Do you remember? Anybody remember? Yeah. We talked about how these negative reactions born of resistance are authority. They tell us who we are, what to do. And they also suggest to us in the moment where they are appearing that I shouldn't be what I am in that moment, but rather I should model myself after Christ or Buddha. So now my authority isn't Christ or Buddha as I imagine. My authority is the mind that imagines a way to escape itself by fashioning itself after some other dream. That's the ticket. But you have to prepare. I'm trying to bring everything. But you have to be prepared to see that. Because at some point, I'm terrified not to have a model. I have to know what to do in order to know who to be. Or I have to know who to be so that I can know what to do. That's the game, isn't it? And it's endless. And then one day I realized, you know what? And you will see this, God willing, Annette, you stay. I am so far removed from the Christ that I've imagined, it's terrifying. And the only time I'm anything like the Christ I've imagined is when I'm thrilling over the sense of myself for being Christ-like and tolerating all these lesser beings that surround me. What a relief. I can only wish it for you and spend my life trying to help you see. One day the whole thing just has to collapse. Just has to collapse. You have to see this hunger and this striving and this struggle and this endless attempt to make sure that whatever takes place 2 minutes from now looks exactly like I need it to look like, so you will see me look like as imagined you must. You'll just see the whole thing. And in that moment you realize I have spent my life listening to Guy. Listening to whatever, he's my authority. And I fail to see that the authority that I follow, incidentally, that I become one with when I identify with any negative state, there's no me apart from that negativity. It is a continuity of an unconscious nature expressing itself. In that moment, I have to see, my God. And this is where faith starts. Faith is those 3 kids that went into that fiery den because they wouldn't worship the God that they were told they had to worship. Otherwise, they'd be put to death. And they went down into that fire, and a 4th appeared amongst them. This is a biblical story, Old Testament, I think. That's what faith is. Faith is when I give up all my models. Faith is when Abraham took his son Isaac and put him on the rock to sacrifice him. That's faith. Why? Because I can't believe that I have to do this, and yet I know for a fact there's no choice. I have no choice but to give myself up. And you'll see this. It makes no difference what it's telling you. See, you still think there's a difference. There's some really important thing that you just have to kind of hang on to and keep in place, because if you could just do that for another 4,000 years, somehow or other you'll escape Egypt. No, you won't. You'll keep making bricks without straw. And then the day comes and it's in scale. You're prepared for it. You're prepared to be no one. Because when you're no one, you're everyone. Because you're the meeting ground of these forces and all that is being conceived through them. That's who you are. And you witness that, and it is the glorification of God who has brought those conditions together to reveal these qualities that you're not apart from as you share a relationship with them. And then it's another something else. This is the Mandela, the constant throwing away of everything that you think is precious. Because you find out what's precious is the life that you're already in the light. That's what's precious. Because there's nothing that enters into the light that isn't part of the light. There's nothing that isn't changed as it enters into that light. And there's nothing that comes out of that light that isn't light still. And that's your life. Preparation by preparation by preparation. Don't get into imagining that or you're dead in the water. You're dead in the water. You've had a moment or two like Jane's had. I know all of you, if you wouldn't be here all these years, if you hadn't had certain epiphanies by which you start to recognize, this is pretty cool. But then then the heat comes. Here comes the heat. And then here comes the heat. And when the heat comes, I can't remember anything at all about the beautiful epiphanies that I had when I realized all is one. Because when the heat comes, I'm not one with the heat. Are you? Hell no. Something has delivered me into the fiery pit, and I'm going to get even with him, her, them, or this.
Jill raised her hand, so I'm going to unmute you, Jill. And there you are.
Hi, Guy. So I had a glimpse of a conversation that I had with someone that Jill wanted recognition for being knowledgeable, but I didn't have it in the moment.
The knowledge you wanted to be recognized for? Is that what you're saying? You said you wanted to be recognized for your knowledge, but you didn't have it in the moment. So what didn't you have in the moment? The knowledge that you wanted to be recognized?
I didn't have the glimpse in the moment. I had it hours later.
Go ahead. I'm ahead of you, but go ahead, please, and we'll get there.
Okay. So my question is it, to see it later instead of seeing it in the moment.
Okay, so pause. When you say see it later, do you mean see what you wanted to share that you couldn't because you didn't have it? Or see that you were trying to have something and failed? What is it that you say you saw later?
To see Jill, that Jill
later. Okay, got it. Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
This is perfect. Look, Jill, for the longest time, here's how it kind of goes. At first, there's just nothing but Jill. And at some point, you start to gag on Jill. And then you start to realize that what I really want, it isn't you that's making me sick, it's what I want from you that's sickening me. I start to see it. So now I have a slightly different perspective because I'm not quite as quick to identify with what I always identify with. There's a small pause, it's not a big one, but for the longest time I'm without that pause, and I have pause like this, and I'm caught up struggling, fighting, clinging, blah, blah, blah. Then, and this is key here, there's a difference between retrospection that reveals a quality you didn't see in the moment versus judging yourself for what you see you weren't in that moment. There's a big difference between this. If the retrospection is the shock, Jesus, I know better than that. And the more you are without judgment in that retrospective moment, the better off you are. Because there is still a lingering shock even though it's not a direct one, meaning in the moment that delivers the blow, there's still a certain picture of yourself that you start to see, that I'm nothing like I imagined. I tried to pull it off, I didn't, and I can see how distasteful it was. Not only that, but I didn't do myself or anybody else any good. So there's that kind of retrospection. That's healthy, as long as it doesn't turn into self-loathing or judgment. Right, Ellen? Because the minute it turns into judgment, it's not retrospective anymore, is it? It's me in the mirror looking at who I should have been and hating myself because I wasn't. That's not retrospective. So retrospective means a perspective after the event. Perspective after the event. That may be the best we can do for a while. But when we become retrospective sufficiently, the energy that instead of being wasted on judging ourselves begins to acquire and accumulate in a certain way in the relationship of the centers capable of making and receiving these impressions. Now, instead of being retrospective, I start to have a couple moments where I'm not retrospective, but I'm kind of on the spot. And I start to see things on the spot, and then I have to then become retrospective how I didn't want to see that on the spot. Because I gave it up. I looked the other way. So now I can begin to see in real time, not a lot at first, so I go from retrospective to introspective. I'm inside my own perception, not outside of it, looking at and measuring. I'm actually involved in my own perception, introspective. That's the key to become increasingly. Now, introspective doesn't mean thinking about myself in that moment. That's not introspection. So we want to move from this retrospective state to an introspective state. And then one day, if you work at that, you won't have to be introspective because you'll be the one behind the mirror. You'll be present to everything that's unfolding in these opposites, and you won't have to think about or measure what you see because you'll be participating in the movement of these things. Then you've entered into another level altogether. But that's the best I can do, Jill. I hope that helps.
We have just a couple minutes left. I'm going to read this note that came in from Juan. Hello, Guy. Thank you very much for your teachings. In listening to class today, different notions covered in other classes keep coming up, such as being in this world but not of it, non-action, and the last one that hit home, I experience in each moment what I deserve. I sense a connection and a thread, but cannot grasp it. Is this at all related to what you discussed today?
Yes. That's it. Yes. Stay present. Stay working. Try and see this relationship. Because if you'll see the relationship, it will teach you. You won't have to try to teach yourself. You'll participate in the grand divine teaching. Eric's up, and then we'll finish with Eric.
Hi, I'm Eric. The other day I had just to sit quietly for a few minutes. And right when I had that impetus, I started thinking about how the mind will do anything, think of anything, so that it doesn't have to sit still. And I even thought about how I might get up here and talk about it. Get up to the mic and talk about it. And guess what? I didn't sit still. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
I don't even know where I ended up. But the impression of that, I'm sure, I'm not going to forget that.
No, you won't. Because where you ended up is where you started. Yeah. See, and that's what has to be seen like 100 million times till you, psychologically speaking, you don't resist that, But you bring to that moment an understanding that if I don't find some way to keep my attention where it needs to be in this moment, then it'll become someone else's attention, someone else's action, and then I'll keep repeating the same thing that consciousness does. And you'll see it with clarity. And the clearer it becomes, the more adamant you will be in your interior wish for this proper kind of rebellion.
Right.
Yeah.
One part of that is that even the spiritual conversation
Of course.
is a
No, they're no different. They're no different. That's the beauty of it. And it isn't that you throw them away, because there are times, but there is the difference between manipulating stuff, trying to massage, get blood out of a stone, versus I've had an epiphany and there's a natural movement in me. There's a natural wishing to let go of what I was given so I can explore it more clearly. And then you'll start seeing where that comes to a natural end too. And it will. Everything comes to an end if you let it. And the end of everything is always the beginning of the next impression.
Thanks.
See you.